Here we go. Welcome back, everybody, to another TLC call. We are about to start conversation number 59 with Florent. He's going to tell us today about causal inference, about humans, and data and behaviors. So, behavioral economist. This is a first for the TLC. 10 years of experience in business analytics and behavioral science. Wrote a book, not the first author that we have here, but I actually have this book. I don't know that I told you about this. I ordered it last month from Amazon, and digging through, this is really cool stuff, man. Really cool stuff. Pretty cool content. You guys need to check it out. Behavioral data analysis with R and Python. You all should, if you have any interest in the subject of R or Python, but more interestingly, how it relates to behavioral analysis is really, really cool. I highly recommend it. And currently, can we say where you work? Is that allowed?
Oh, yeah. I currently work for cause.com, and I actually have a couple of colleagues in the audience.
Currently at cars.com, doing really cool stuff there on the experimentation team, and holds a Ph.D. in behavioral economics. So I'm going to pass it over to you. I will stop share and let you take over the screen share. So get ready, guys. This will be a little bit different from our normal talks, but I'm pretty excited because I've already seen the deck. So thank you, Florent.
Yeah, well, thank you for the warm intro, Kelly. And I do think that what you said about it being a bit different is accurate. The best compliment, and I think the most accurate I've had on my book, is someone who was doing a master's in analytics who said that the book was orthogonal to everything he was learning, but in a good way. And I think this is kind of really the the expectation I'd like to set for today. So, okay, here. So, yeah. Everything that was said already just should go without saying, but worth repeating on the recording. All the opinion in this presentation are mine and do not reflect my employer's position. But now that it is said, so let's jump in. And so really, why do we test? We test to make inferences, to know what causes what. Like, well, did this change actually change this behavior? Did this thing move that number? So that is causal inference. And why do we care about causal inference? We care about causal inference because we want to change behavior. And I would argue that really, if at the end of a causal inference project, no one's behavior has changed, then that is probably not a successful project. Like, the end game is, well, usually in business, make more money, but the end game is changing someone's behavior, getting customer to buy your product, getting employee to be more effective, and so on. And so this is where my, the idea that will be on my tombstone comes in, which is the Causal Behavioral Framework for data analysis. And framework is a little bit of a grand word, and I think probably 80% of what goes into the framework is a mindset. And that mindset is that if you are doing data analysis about human beings, and I mean, I say human beings, and that's not just to be cute. It's like, what I'm saying is absolutely not relevant to large part. If you're working on, say, predictive maintenance of solar panel or wind turbine, like, there is just an element of data analysis about human behavior that is, I believe, unique and underexplored and underanalyzed. And so if your data is about humans, then you need to have a mindset of, well, what are the behaviors that we're talking about? and what are the causal relationships that we're talking about. And causality is actually quite hard to really think clearly about, and that's where causal diagram come in, which is probably like 10% of the rest of the framework about, except the mindset. So really, when you are working on data analysis about human, you need to think about behaviors and you need to think about causality. And the rest of this presentation is going to be kind of exploring the various arrows on this graph and like, what does it mean to have those connections? And another warning that kind of goes to the orthogonal to everything, that this is not science. And I do hope at some point we will have more of a science of this, but this is really a practitioner kind of fumbling in the dark and trying to like, oh, that person said this, it kind of works for what I'm trying to do. That other thing also works, let's like plug them together. But if you ask me where are the theorems, it's like, there are no theorems. Like can I prove that this works? No, I can't. It's just, hey, like I found something in that region, go visit and see what you see. If you find something there, some church there you want to bring back home. So first thing, connecting data and behaviors. And so one of my wife's favorite movie is The Princess Bride. And I do think that we use variables without thinking enough about what they mean. And it's like, the person, this is the conversion rate. No, it is not. This is the person's, like the number of purchase. No, it is not. And so really, I want to get to, you have probably heard that metaphor, that, well, that's analogy, that data is a new gas, data is a new gas, data is a new oil, sorry, data is a new oil. And I really need to get a new one to get more in tune with renewable, but bear with me for a few more years. So data is a new oil, but which oil is it? It is petroleum, it is not car gas. And what I mean by that is that if you think about the metaphor of cleaning up data, it's like the idea that there's a bit of dirt, but then you have insights in there that are like diamonds that you just need to clean around, but then there is a diamond, and the diamond is there. Whereas to go from petroleum to gas, there's no like petroleum gas hidden in the petroleum. You need to refine it. And why do I need to refine it? Because in general, databases reflect business processes. They reflect software engineering processes. They do not reflect human behavior. And the example I always give is if you send an email to a customer, you place an order, the product is out of stock, bam, the order is canceled. Well, from a database perspective, from an accounting perspective, this order is canceled. It doesn't count. The company does not have money, which is fair. Like from an accounting perspective, that makes sense. But from the perspective of like, well, sure that the goal of the email was to get money, but the fact that the product was out of stock is not the fault of the marketing campaign manager. And so the behavior was placing an order, and that is the behavior that your data need to reflect. And one thing I have learned painfully is to be aware and careful with business default. And so, for example, the example I encountered was like, okay, we had a customer base where we had like 80% of our customer base was in paperless billing. And the question is like, how do we get the other 20% into paperless billing? And what I realized across the process is, well, when a new customer comes in, they are automatically enrolled in paperless. And so if they are not using paperless billing, it means that they called someone or they wait on the internet and they opted out of paperless billing. So the question is not, oh, how do we get them to opt in? It's like, it's why are they opting out and how do we stop them from opting out? But telling them, hey, you could have paperless billing. Yes, they know, they took specific action to cancel it. They are very aware and very unhappy with the fact that you make them enroll them. So business default, accounting and business processes versus behavior. So that is really one of the key aspects, like think about the behaviors. And so one aspect of it is that when we have our data, I mean, the title says that a single variable can express multiple behavior and vice versa. And really, the way I think about behavior is, can you, if you were like a ghost in the room, could you see the person do it? Like, I want customers to like our product. Liking is not a behavior. Being aware, not a behavior. Signing up, behavior. Purchasing, behavior. And so the really, you want to be like, well, were they at home? Were they on their phone, in the car? Like, what was the behavior? And like, did they check that one box, or did they check the unsubscribe from all? Like, those are different behaviors, and those are different behaviors that have different implication of how they were thinking and what they were doing. And similarly, I mean, do you know the price of the last grocery item you bought? Probably not. Like, if you ask me what was the actual price of the last box of, I mean, probably not eggs, because I was thinking about eggs, but the last box of cereal I bought, like, what was the price of it? I don't know. And so if the price increase and the customers still buy the same number of units, they're not buying more. Your revenue is increasing, and clearly that tells you that they're not very price sensitive, but they did not buy more. They're still buying the same number of boxes and just not very aware of the price. And so really thinking a lot about behavior is a good way to help make your variable more effective. And so how do we think about behavior? It helps to have a clear model of human behavior. And so really, if you think about kind of a very, and this is a very simplified model, I'm not going to get the Nobel Prize in medicine for this, but really the idea is like, well, you have the personal characteristics. Florent live in Dallas. Florent care about the environment, and he's afraid of climate change, and therefore he intends to buy a Prius, and then he buy a Prius. Or to take the example here, and it's like, well, if you're reaching your 40s, I'm still a couple of years away from that, so I will very soon have a Corvette instead of a Prius, or red hair, you'll see. But still, like, having this model allows you to think like, well, when we're talking about consumer expectation, when we're talking about promoter score, what are we talking about? Like, what are the actions that are taken? Are we talking about an intent? Are we talking about a demographic characteristic? Because you can change someone's cognition, emotion, intention, action. You cannot change the personal characteristic. Building a segmentation on personal characteristic and demographic characteristic is by definition building a segmentation you cannot affect. You might say, well, people who have those characteristics then have those intention and those behavior, and those are the ones we want to affect, but you cannot change personal characteristics. And so, yes. Let me keep an eye on the clock. So yeah, really just kind of the idea that, like, if your data does not reflect your behavior, then you're incurring some data debt, and you need to, like, this is, I find, especially like with A/B testing, it can be a very kind of insidious tax on your result of like, oh, you're obsessing as to, well, was that, like, this was, the p-value was 4.5%, is that really significant? It's like, well, if you have like a 3% variance in your data to compare to behavior, this is not the right question to ask. You should be asking what is the behavior. So that was really the first piece, behaviors and data, and kind of, yeah, again, maybe 7% of the framework. Now, those behaviors, how do we think about the causality around those behavior? Like, how do we think about what drives what? And so, causal diagram. There's those two words, and really this is the other 7-ish% of the framework, which is causal diagram are awesome. you need to use causal diagram. Like causal diagram are really one of the causal inference best friend. Think about it. Why do we do A/B test? Because if you think about chemistry, like, okay, you're not, like, imagine like if people who did chemistry in high school, like you did not have a test tube with substance A, and okay, add other test tube with substance A, and you were proving substance B, the only one test tube to say, okay, there was a chemical reaction, and because the other tube did not change, that tells me that the product was called by the new product B. Like, no, you don't need to. Why do you not need to have a randomized test tube in chemistry? Because there are no confounders. It's like, okay, there is one test tube that is full of exactly only the product A, and I'm pouring from benzene tube that only has product B. There are no confounders. It's clean. But in reality, as we know, in the real world of human behaviors, in particular biology as well, but like human behavior, we have confounders. There are a lot of things that happen, and so that's why we don't just rely on pre-post the way you could do with chemistry. Is that, well, there was a lot of other things happening at the same time, and therefore the correlation is not causation phrase, which has been overused and misused, when really there are actually when actually correlation means causation. Like, there is one specific case which is, okay, that was a purely spurious correlation, which was, oh, if you collect more data, that does not stick around. So like, for example, the Nicolas Cage and drowning graph, that's a purely spurious correlation. There is no real correlation. It was just, oh, this, if you squint that way, you see a correlation. Now, if you have a large enough data set and this correlation is not spurious, I will say it is causal. Now, what does that mean? It means that variable A caused variable B, variable B caused variable A, or there was an external causal structure, typically a confounder, which is a joint cause. But in reality, so like, in fact, when you have correlation, it does not always mean that variable A causes variable B. But if this correlation is not purely spurious, there is a causal structure underlying, and eliciting this causal structure will allow you to really understand what's happening. And someone can find me an example, but like, no, like this is really, there is a correlation, but there is no causal structure. I'll take it. I'm pretty convinced personally by this argument. So causal diagrams allow us to understand the world, and in business they are especially helpful because they help us kind of unpack the logic of business action. So I've been in project where it's like, oh, we need to do this because our VP read an article in the Harvard Business Review, or we need to do this because our competitor is agile. And it's like, okay, yes, our competitor is agile, and yes, we need to do this, but is there really a causal relation between the two, or does one not imply the other? And so if you think about a one-click purchase button, they left for posterity by online retailers that everyone is familiar with. Like, okay, now if you imagine someone says, your boss says, oh, hey, we need to have a one-click purchase button on our website. It's like, okay, sure, maybe we do, but why? Like, well, and one hypothesis could be, well, the one-click button means that the booking process or the purchasing process is faster, and the duration of the booking process actually impacts the completion of the booking, which impacts revenue. And so now you have a causal model, and the beauty of it is that you can actually validate that causal model before running any A/B test. Because if you find in your data today that there is no correlation between the duration of the process and the probability of completing the booking, and that, for example, people just bail at the very beginning of the booking process, and so they don't actually experience that much of the process, then there is no point in having a one-click button. You're solving for the wrong problem. And so having, like, unpacking, like, why do we believe that what we're trying to do, which is our lever that we can push and pull, is going to drive the thing we care about. Well, if you unpack the causal chain in the middle, very often you'll find that you can look at the data you have today and confirm whether that's the case or not. I've had a situation with a past client where it was, hey, our website sucks, yes. And so we need to get a more modern, customer-friendly website, yes. So UX research team does all the research, like new design, cleaner, everything. Perfect, we roll out. And what happens? What is the impact on revenue? None. I mean, turns out that yes, the previous website sucked. And yes, the newer website is more customer friendly and prettier and more enjoyable. But turned out that was never the blocker for purchase. Like, people did not bail on the website because it was ugly. They bailed on the website, if you want my opinion, because they could not understand what was the product that was sold to them and why they should buy it, which has nothing to do with visual and aesthetics. And so, again, there was this implicit assumption that, well, with a cleaner website, we will increase revenue. That hypothesis, that assumption was never made clear. And therefore, the business leaders were disappointed, even though UX research perfectly did that job of getting the prettiest, cleanest, most modern website. Causal diagram. And one of the maxims I'm a big fan of in business is to maximize the amount of work not done. If you can find something and say, okay, we're not going to do that giant thing because it's pointless, that is one of the best way to be more effective at your work. Not get 5% more effective at what you're actually doing because you've read Getting Things Done, great book, but because you're maximizing, like, nope, not gonna do that, not gonna do that, not gonna do that. And looking at, like, unpacking the causal logic of a business initiative and analyzing data before even getting started with an initiative, really good way to not do work, be lazy. So now that is one of my favorite slides in this presentation. This is actually, I mean, obviously grayed out for obvious reasons, but this is an actual causal diagram from an actual consulting project. And I built it over the course of several weeks with the business partner from several departments. And so, the blue was like randomization, the blue, the square in the middle is randomization. Like, okay, we are going to have randomized whether you get this or that. And then you have, so orange is a treatment, orange on the left is treatment, orange on the right is the outcome. And all those kind of diagonal, like dashed line, all possible confounding relationship and characteristics of things. And the thing is that really building the diagram really helped us to be like, oh, well, we know that for this line of business, there is this thing happening. Well, where do we think it fits into the overall logic of what's going on? Is there something we need to care about? So, like, for example, if you look at the squares in the upper right corner, those squares impact the target metric. And so tracking them could help reduce the variance of our result, but they are not correlated to anything else. So we don't actually need to worry about them. We can use them to reduce variance, but we don't need to worry about them. And then whenever we had a business partner saying, oh, have you thought about this? Okay, we slap a square or a circle for an observed variable somewhere, and then we work with it. It is awesome. And it also looks really cool, and it helps you justify your consulting fees. So now at 10:30, yep, I'm on time. So now to the causal analysis of experimental data, and also just causal analysis of data in general. How do we go from data to causality and from causality to data, and how do we extract causal insight from all the noise that there is in the world? And so one thing I will say, and so this is one piece where I will probably get some people in the group to clench a bit the teeth that I am really not a fan of the null hypothesis statistical testing framework. And I do think that it does completely make sense when you have, okay, we have a robust body of knowledge and we want to be very careful about adding to it, because once we add to it, it will stick around. For example, what we believe to be true in Newtonian physics is still believed to be true today. It's like, okay, we still believe that the apples are falling from trees because of gravity and such. And so really important to minimize false positive. But when you have a website and you're iterating on it continuously, then there is no real cumulative thing. It's like, well, this really, we're trying to make decisions under uncertainty over time in a way that ideally should not be too path dependent. If you have two competing design, B and C, compared to an existing design, and really they are kind of all in the same neighborhood of each other. If you use the null hypothesis statistical testing framework, and it's like, oh, the effect size is positive and economically significant, but confidence interval overlap with 0, so we're going to revert to the control and not apply the treatment, you are going to miss out on business opportunity. And so that is the piece where I've had people at other, with PhDs in statistics and other presentations in other companies erupt and be like, no. And so I will just leave that to your consideration. But again, I don't have proof, I don't have theorem. I do believe that as experimentalists, even if we are called data scientists, or if you have scientists or behavioral scientists, or we have scientists in our job title, our job is to help the business make better decisions. And making better decisions under uncertainty is not the same thing as building a cumulative body of knowledge for the eons to come. It's like, okay, this is like, yeah, you like take this medication, and if it still hurts in 2 weeks, come see me again. This is more of medicine than biology or even chemistry. It's what's happening? Well, I mean, if you do this, that's probably going to improve. It's a lot of local optimization. So, but if we're not going to use the null hypothesis statistical testing framework, what are we going to do? We're going to use the Bootstrap. The Bootstrap is also absolutely fantastic, and that's about the last 7% of the framework. It's like, well, how do we deal with sampling uncertainty? Because really that's what it's about. Cannot observe entire population. How do we measure the uncertainty? We use the Bootstrap. The Bootstrap is, in one sentence, sampling with replacement. So if you have, for example, an example, if you, the link at the bottom of the page is about an example that I gave on Medium with how to do Bootstrap the code when you have 10 data points. And so you do with replacement, which means that you might have like data point 4, 8, 6, 6. And so some appear multiple times, some don't appear at all because you're getting the same size. And then you run your regression again. And really that gives you a confidence interval that will give you a good sense like, well, how much is my, how much sampling uncertainty do I have? And really with the one thing is that if you have a very small sample, like for example, 10 data points, that's where traditional statistics is going to throw the arms and say, oh no, I'm not touching that. When this is really when you care the most about understanding sampling uncertainty. Like, okay, having statistics tell me, oh, you have 1 million data points, so sampling uncertainty doesn't matter. Like, okay, cool, I could have guessed that. But I want to know how much sampling uncertainty I have when I have 10 data points. And really, that's where traditional statistics will really kind of leave you in the wood, and the Bootstrap is going to work really well. Still uncertainty, 10 data points is not 100. You should have 100 if you can, but if you have 10, it's because you cannot have 100. And one aspect why the Bootstrap in my presentation about causal inference about human behavior, because human behavior are not normal. You're looking at the duration of the longevity of a wind turbine, probably going to be pretty smooth because it's the accumulation of like small factor, wind, rain, etc., erosion. So those follow normal rules. Human behavior mixture of, oh, we have different population, oh, and then there was this thing, and then there was that influencer, and like things are not normal. And the truth is that we are kind of in a feedback loop where we always apply the normality assumption, and then because we always apply the normality assumption without actually checking it, or being like, oh yeah, okay, it's 5% off, but true, that we're still going to apply the normality assumption, we assume that things are normal. They're not. Like when you actually, I talk about it in Medium, it's like, when you actually look at how much do minor deviation from normality matter, they really do. And how common are those minor deviations from normality? They are very common. And then let's not even talk about like purchase prices or number of purchases that are going to have multi-mode stuff. So really the Bootstrap is awesome. Also p-values. I have a master's degree in econometrics. Probably, it used to be 1.5, but now probably 1 time in 4, when I try to explain to someone what the p-value actually measure, I say it wrong. It's like, okay. And I have a master's degree in the damn thing. So how can we expect our business partner to actually understand the p-value? Like, it's misunderstood. It is also misused because really what we care about, I'll make an attempt at getting it right, what we care about is not the probability of the data given the null assumption. What we care about is the probability of the null assumption given the data, which is completely different things. And especially completely different things when you have non-normal data or when you have like very skewed thing, aka human behavior. So the Bootstrap. Now, when to use the Bootstrap, here, fear not, I have a diagram. And so really the thing is like when you have a lot of data points, you have a clear-cut economic coefficient. Coefficient is clear-cut from an economic standpoint, and you only care about the coefficient itself. By all means, just use the coefficient from traditional analysis, like you're good to go. It's like, well, I care about the confidence interval, and my confidence interval is like just on the side of 0, and like the residual are not normal at all. Okay, that's where you need to use confidence interval, and especially Bootstrap confidence interval. So one discussion that we were having a couple of days ago on the chat is like, well, how do you deal with power analysis? And so in this case, that was, well, I'm at the end of my fixed horizon test. I want to get a sense of like how much more reduction I'm going to get in uncertainty if I run the test for another week or 2 weeks. And really, that's where the Bootstrap is fantastic. So if you can just go back with and look at your historical data, because if there is one thing that we in business have, it's a lot of historical data in general. And so then you draw some historical data, again with replacement, split data into a control group and a treatment group with no actual difference. If necessary, respect nested structure. Another benefit of the Bootstrap is that you can respect nested structure. Say you have half of your customers are in California, half of your customers are in Texas. Well, that is a nested structure. And so you really want to understand to treat this differently. And or you have like, well, I'm going to randomize the treatment, and like some teams in the call center are going to get the treatment, some other team are going to be the control, but I have individual employee level data. What is the power analysis for that? There are actually formulas in some cases which are just horrible. Just use the Bootstrap. And so, and one thing that is really neat and feels kind of cheating, but is not with the Bootstrap, is that once you've drawn that historical data and you determine your metric of interest, that sample that you obtained from Bootstrap, you can run the Bootstrap on it again to get the confidence interval on that one. and then you repeat, and then you repeat, and then you can calculate node distribution for complex metrics. Like, let's say for one example I gave in the Medium article about the Bootstrap is, let's say that your company is considering instituting a policy of your pizza in 30 minutes or free. Well, how often does a pizza delivery take more than 30 minutes? Like, this is a threshold-based metric, which may depend by neighborhood, like, or those are pretty, you can have pretty complex metrics in business, or people who are above that threshold, but below that other threshold. Bootstrap is your friend. Okay, so yeah, as you can see, so time check, okay, 10:41. So I have this time check here, so for me to stop here if I were already on time, but we have a bit of more time, so I will give you some extra goodies in the next slide. Before that, was there any, Kelly, was there any question that I should take now?
There are a couple of comments and a couple of questions that have been added into the Slack.
The chat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the slide. In the Slack channel, let me.
Yep.
Pull that.
I can read them out.
Okay, yeah, you can read them out. That's going to be easier.
Yep. Ronnie asked, you wrote, if you send an email to a customer and they place an order, but that order is canceled because the product is out of stock, this should still count for conversion purposes. And Ronnie says, I'm not sure. I would certainly be cautious about the reasons. This can lead to perverse incentives where marketing advertises hard or impossible to get products because they get credit for partial conversions that never materialize. He points out a joke where a person complains to a salesperson that the price of an item is high and points to the store on the other corner saying it's 20% cheaper over there. And the salesperson asks, why didn't the customer just go buy over there? And the customer says, well, it's out of stock. And the salesperson says, well, when I run out of stock, I'll advertise it 30% cheaper.
That's the point. And I'm not saying that as a sub because of the behavioral economic incentives are a big chunk of my trade. And like, yes, definitely. But I would definitely not take that example literally. I would argue that what Ronnie says, if you go one step above, is like, well, you need to be careful about what are the behaviors, which is the broader point. Like, well, what are the behaviors of the marketing team? What are the behaviors of the sales team? And really have incentive compatible designs and measures and so yeah, like having but definitely I'll leave it at that, but that's a fair point.
And Tim asked, the causal diagrams built collaboratively in a workshop. And then he said, those are assumptive causal diagrams, right? Or are they a mix of assumed and known? And then he asks, isn't experimentation a good way to validate assumptions about causality?
Yeah, so those are assumptive, and that it's really, so I mean, really the first step is like go with expert knowledge, which most of the time is just, well, the way we've done things for 20 years. But
expert in quotes, man, come on.
No, okay. No, because it's the expert knowledge of the business partners. I can poo-poo the business partners. We are the experts. But no, like that is a good way to make explicit kind of the way the business thinks. Business, not a person. The business thinks about its customer and be like, okay, so you believe that this thing affects that thing. Okay, well then do we see that in the data? Then run tests, and so it is a very iterative process, and just like, but yeah, getting the assumption all in one place and then verifying them progressively is a really good way to make things more stable over time, and also then transfer knowledge to new team members. But yeah, you start with assumption, and then it's an always live document. Okay. Any other? I think we have. Yeah, if you have one more, I can take now. Otherwise, I can take them at the end of the presentation.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay. So one other thing of like, well, one thing which, again, like people in different areas doing things and never talking about it, but really when we talk about heterogeneous treatment effect in econometrics, this is really segmentation in marketing, and this is really moderation in psychology. And moderation or segmentation or HTE can be a bit complex to understand. Of like, well, if I show you the graph on the right, like moderated effect, like, but causal diagram to the rescue, you can say, well, I have my experimental treatment, and I can find that my experimental treatment, really the way that my experimental treatment affects the amount spent differs by this demographic variable, which again in regression is just an interaction term. And so really, like when you think about, like I feel like quite often we have segmentation early on, and so we have big spenders and small spenders, and then we do something ideally without a control group, because if you get a control group, you'll get a measurement. So like, let's just send a campaign to the big spenders, and lo and behold, the people who have received the campaign spend more than our average customer. Well, yeah, because that's circular and you send it to big spenders. And then experimentation comes and crashes the bus. But really, that's why I don't really think segments are really not necessarily that necessary at the early stages. Like trying to start with segment is not always, I think that can be counterproductive, but I think that is a great way to look at experimental result. Like, because really what you care about is not who are the big spenders and who are the low spenders. What you care about is who are the spenders we can convince to spend more, because again, you don't care about fixed behavior, you care about behavior change. And so I would argue that finding the small spender that you can convince to spend more is way more important than finding big spenders. And how do you do that? You run an experiment, and then you look, you segment that 26 way to Sunday with a causal diagram and an interaction term. And then how do you make sure you don't have a false positive? You iterate with another test instead of relying on the bound-theory correction. But really, I feel like segmentation is a really nice step right after you've run an A/B test to really understand the changes in behavior change. And again, and also in many cases, if you have like, oh, my confidence interval looks like the central estimate looks good, but it's just not great. Like segmenting is like, ooh, okay, we find that it's really only the people who visit our website on mobile who respond to our message. So let's focus send them coupon only to the people who visit our website on their phone and not the people who visit our website on desktop. And so you've gotten 1/3, 1/2, 2/3 the cost of your coupon program, but you're targeting it where it's having the biggest effect. So really, how can you get extra bang for your buck once you have looked at the treatment? It's like, yeah, can we stop doing it for some people? And like that can be very helpful. And that one, I'm also like really, the trick of the trade is like, how can you measure the causal effect of something as subjective and endogenous as customer satisfaction? How can you know if customer satisfaction actually increases purchase or engagement or anything? Well, you do a downstream analysis of experiment because you have a control group and a treatment group, send thank you note to some, find that increases the CSAT. And then if you look at the downstream variable and you're like, okay, well, I have a control group, I have a treatment group, And the only difference between the control group and the treatment group is the thank you note. So any difference in CSAT between my control group and my treatment group is like really unconfounded because it's caused by my treatment. So now of the people I have sent a thank you note to, are they more engaged? Are they buying more than the people who are in my control group? And like now you can actually measure the causal effect of your customer satisfaction or any, and see like, well, are more satisfied customer actually more likely to retain? And so really downstream analysis of experiment. And the beauty of it is that you can do it ex post. It's like, oh, you had this experiment you did 6 months ago or a year ago about CSAT. Well, you can still do this analysis ex post. You don't need to change anything to design. It's like, just look back at your past experiment and look at, well, when we did this, did that actually impact further downstream variables that we care about? This one's really fun. Okay, and so then to conclude, so when you have behavioral data, so human beings are wonderful, complex, idiotic things. One thing that my one of the like kind of law I had when I was doing my PhD and we were running experiments in the lab, one of the law was when you have like the statistical term, there is always a non-null support for any behavior. So like if you have people in the lab, there are 6 possible actions. 1 optimal, 2 or 3 that are okay, 2 that are completely stupid. If you have enough subject, you will find someone who will take the most idiotic action at some point. Like if you with a large enough sample, any action, any behavior, however weird or counterintuitive, will get non-zero support. The other human being, love them or, well, love them. And so that's why I think that causal inference and behavioral data, like we talk about art and science, and I'm like, this is definitely not a science, and I'm definitely not an artist. It is a craft. Like you have a concrete, pragmatic goal, and then you develop heuristics, and you develop your gut instinct. You're like, okay, my gut tells me this, and then you experiment. Like, well, okay, I'm going to listen to my gut this time, and if it's right, I'll be like, okay, that was right. If it's wrong, it's like, okay, that was wrong, and you hone your instinct. But if you run more experiment and you feel that something smells funny, that is an information. Take into account that information. Know your data. One thing I'm always appalled by is data scientists, especially like people who are really versed in the machine learning side of things, who have no sense for the actual shape and contour and landscape of their data. It's like, okay, so the data is a read file, apply algorithm, get number, and so the only thing they look at is like, okay, what is my area under the curve, and I tweak, and the only thing they look at is the area under the curve. No, data is like, look at data. Like you should really, there is nothing, I mean, every time, I mean, not every time, but probably 2 out of 3 times that I look at raw hit level data, I discover something. I'm like, oh, we're double counting visits here. Oh, we are not counting clicks on that. Or why is this thing triggering the same variable as that other thing? Like, data, like really get to know your data and see see what numbers make sense. It's like, okay, I have, like when you're running an analysis and you have a number that tells you, okay, in that subsegment, this is the duration, like the retention of our customer in that segment. Is that plausible? How does that relate with your average customer retention? Like get an intuition. And one last thing I will say, which I heard from a UX researcher, like we were talking about what it means to be a researcher in business. And one thing I said that stuck with me is, what can I get away with? Because really, you probably have an advanced degree, you could do this right, but you don't have the time and this is not your job. Your job is to help people make decisions under uncertainty while covering your ass and not bankrupting your business. And so really, it's like, okay, if someone asks you, okay, like, should we implement a treatment? You need to learn to develop that sense of like, yeah, sure, go ahead. Like, that's not gonna break the thing, or being like, hold on, no, I have to put my foot down, like, we need to run another test because this is not gonna work. But you're never going to be fully comfortable with the way things are run. But that doesn't mean that you should disregard your discomfort either. Like, you need to learn what are the level of discomfort that are okay, what are the level of discomfort that are not okay, and what can you say to people that will drive the business in the right decision and not get you into trouble. So again, very not scientific, but it's a craft. And for the people who are still around, who have not run away, so my book, their book, so which I have to say, so definitely got some good street cred and like hello with the O'Reilly label, but I have to say, title really misnomer, behavioral data analysis with R and Python, not really the best way to target to business people. Like, it does, I did make an attempt with a subtitle like customer-driven data for your business results, but I feel like if we had swapped the subtitle and the title, it would have worked better. But still, it is selling. I'm getting some good like recurring sales, good feedback. If you read it, reviews are always welcome, especially on a retailer I should not name. And then it is also it is also on O'Reilly Learning, which is an online platform, and I have the following discount, like the following code will give you 1 month of free access to the entire O'Reilly plus pack, plus some Wiley library. So you can totally free to text that code, go read other Wiley books and not read mine. But you can also check mine. You can follow me on Medium. And yeah, so that's about it. We are 3 minutes left, so I'll take, and if you have any other comment or question, I'll take them.
All right, open it up to any questions, and then I'll remind you all of our next couple of TLC conversations. Going once. Pulling up my schedule here.
Okay. And logistics. Obviously, the slide will be shared so that you can have the code and the links and everything done.
That would be great.
So,
Florent, if you wouldn't mind, if you want to pop like the PDF of the slides in the calls channel, that would just streamline it so I don't have to go grab that. And as a reminder, everybody, on April 7th, we will be welcoming back Toon Westling, who's going to talk to us about looking for more winners. And then on April 21st, Dr. Ellie Feit will be coming back talking about her method of test and roll. So 2 talks in April. And then I think we have the May talks lined up, but not scheduled yet. So thank you so much, Florent. It was really fun. And everybody head over to, he's already dropped it in. So
thank you for having me, and talk to you soon, and have a good weekend.
Thanks all.